Morning, guys. It's Abraham Lincoln here. Ready? Oh, Mr. Fields. This is Mr. Fields. I'm here dressed up as Abraham Lincoln because I'm going to talk to you today about some Lincoln things. One thing I'm going to talk about is the Gettysburg Address. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the Battle of Gettysburg that happened before the Gettysburg Address. And then third thing I'll talk about is the fact that yesterday I tried to dress up for a historical reenactment of the meeting of General McClellan and Abraham Lincoln in the battlefield camp after the Battle of Antietam. So General McClellan and President Lincoln did not get along very well. They did not see eye to eye on how to proceed with the war. Lincoln really wanted to finish the war quickly, wanted it to be something that was over and done with and we can get on with life as usual. And McClellan was he was a good general. He very much enjoyed being a general, but he wasn't very active, and this drove Abraham Lincoln crazy. In fact, Abraham Lincoln would send him letter after letter after letter saying, please act, please go attack, because he would have a win, McClellan would have a win, and the Confederate forces would run away, and then he would sit in camp for a while and have his soldiers run drills, and they would practice, and he wouldn't follow, and he wouldn't pursue the enemy. And he could have. There was several cases where it seemed like we could have been done with the war already if you just attacked after your attack. And it really wasn't clear why McClellan wanted to wait so long, except that maybe he liked waiting, I don't know. But eventually McClellan was replaced by Abraham Lincoln, because if he wasn't going to use the army, then Abraham Lincoln would find somebody who would. So that brings us to today's lesson about the Battle of Gettysburg. So the Battle of Gettysburg. Number one thing you need to remember about the Battle of Gettysburg, it was fought in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is a northern state. The Civil War was mostly fought in the South. The southern states is where the South was seceding. They were becoming their own country. They were trying to leave the Union. So it was up to the Union to run after them and conquer them and make sure that they come back, they behave, and they don't cause any more trouble. When the South invaded the North, there were two reasons that they wanted to do that. Number one reason, they wanted to draw some of the attention away from the South. So they'd already lost some cities, some territories in the South to Union armies that had conquered the Confederate armies. If they were able to have a big win in the North, especially up near Pennsylvania, especially up in the direction of kind of almost not exactly, but going in the movement of Washington, D.C., the capital of the Union, then maybe the Union will get nervous. Maybe the Union will withdraw some troops from places like New Orleans or something like that, so that they can have their control of their land back. That was one reason that the Confederates were invading the North. Second reason is that they were still trying to get recognition from foreign countries as they are their own country. The countries of France and England were one of their biggest trading partners. They wanted to sell their cotton to France and England. And remember, when the Civil War started, cotton was king of the South, and the South was like the number one distributor of cotton for the entire world at that time. So during that time, first they thought that if we hold back on our cotton supply, then we'll sell it for even higher prices and we'll still be able to pay for everything that we need, because France and England, their textile mills, they're going to still need cotton, so we'll just sell it to them.
Daddy, what are textile mills?
Good question. Textile mills are the places, the factories, that they would take the raw cotton and turn it into fabric, into clothing, into things that you would maybe use for hats. That's a good question. Thank you. So unfortunately, like I said in the other podcasts, the beginning of the war, the cotton supply in England actually had reached a surplus. They had bought too much cotton, and they actually had a little bit extra, and they didn't need to buy so much from the South. So if the South wasn't selling as much, it wasn't a big deal. And then while the South was slowing down on production, then they were able to find places like Egypt that could sell them cotton also. And they found other places around the world to buy cotton from. So the cotton demand was no longer making the South king. The second thing was that if a country goes into a civil war, other countries around the world need to decide, okay, well, which side are we going to go with? These two guys were together and then they split apart. Is this one the leader? Do we have diplomatic relations with this one, or do we say this one's the leader? You have to decide. It's really easy to stay neutral if you're not buying and selling things with that country. But if suddenly you decide that, okay, I'm going to buy things from this guy, but I'm going to say that this guy is the real leader of the country, well, this guy's going to be awfully mad and may actually keep you from buying things from this guy. We had to do this with China. China had a civil war. In 1950, it ended. It took about 30 years for us to recognize who the actual leader of China was as the country that won the war, as opposed to the country that lost the war that got retreated to a small island of Taiwan. Not really that small, but it's small enough. So, but yeah, that's one of those examples that you'll study in high school as far as how during a civil war other countries get involved with deciding which country to recognize as the proper country. So in the case of the United States Civil War, you have to recognize, all right, so have the seceding states, are they just the children that are behaving badly and they're going to come back to the Union? Or are they actually now a new country and you need to give them all the support and respect that a new country deserves? That's what they had to decide. All right, so spoiler alert, the Confederates lost the Battle of Gettysburg. They lost, they retreated, they ran back to the south, and they lost about 23,000 men on the battlefield, and they left behind a lot of guns too, which is important when they don't have a manufacturing center like the North to produce more guns. They really needed to have those guns. So losing men, losing guns, losing a battle that ended up being their last major effort into the North, that was significant. So again, going into why is the Battle of Gettysburg significant? Number one, they never ever attempted to invade the North. One more time. They had effectively lost the battle for foreign recognition. That was one of their things, like if we can show this, then other countries will recognize us, and they were not showing it. They were showing that they were a losing side. And they hoped that cotton demand would gain foreign support. It didn't. They hoped a show of strength would gain foreign support. It didn't. So, next we come to the memorial service, effectively, that happened after a little bit after the battle, and that is called the Gettysburg Address. It's a very famous document, probably more famous than the battle itself. But this is a painting I did in high school to go along with me memorizing the Gettysburg Address, and I did a little portrait of Lincoln and parts of a document of where he would have written it down. You see that? Yeah. So that was my Gettysburg Address. But so the Gettysburg Address is a tribute to the fallen soldiers. The big points he makes during the Gettysburg Address, which, by the way, it wasn't a long address. The guy who spoke before him spoke for 2 hours. He had such a great speech. He was so proud of it, and he went on and on and on and had a lot of great points. And then Lincoln gets up there and he's got this really short speech, but man, nobody remembers the first speech, but everybody remembers the details of the Gettysburg Address, because it was a centralizing statement for what this war is about. Lincoln says that we can't dedicate this ground because the soldiers that have already fallen have dedicated it. They dedicated it by making it their life's mission, the end of their life, to win this war. It's our job now to make sure that this war wins, because we have the moral obligation to have this country, the land of the free, that we're going to have it for the people, by the people, bring in the Constitution. We really want this to be a moral cause, and we are on the side of right and furthering the cause. That was the motivating factor of the Gettysburg Address, one of the reasons why it was so famous. So I'm going to read a little bit of the Gettysburg Address to you here. November 19th, 1863. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here have gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here. He was wrong about that. But it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.